All right, good evening, guys. We got a short one tonight. Tonight we are going to be starting our civil rights unit officially, and we are going to do that by talking about the infamous landmark court case, Brown v. Board. So our learning target for today, I can explain how African Americans use the court system to promote equality. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And like I said, by doing that, we're going to be looking at the famous court case, Brown versus Board of Education, to do that. But before we do that, we got to go back to the Wayback Machine. So we have to look at the famous court case, Plessy v. Ferguson. And Plessy v. Ferguson, remember, involved Homer Plessy and him being 1/8 black. And because he was 1/8 black, he cannot ride in a certain part of a train that he wanted to ride in because he was 1/8 black. Okay? Remember the big phrase here that the Supreme Court ultimately decided back in 1896 was that as long as there were equal ways for Plessy to get about, so as long as there were two different train cars, then it was legal. Remember, the big phrase there is separate but equal. So as long as that he could get a ride, didn't matter if it was in the white car or the black car, it did not matter. As long as you had facilities that were equal, then they could be separated. But we're going to look at why Plessy v. Ferguson was ultimately struck down by Brown v. Board. But before we do that, we got to look at the NAACP and why the NAACP was full of smart cookies. How were they able to go so far as to almost eliminate de jure segregation? Remember, de jure segregation being segregation by law. So, African American leaders, they saw that the two best ways to beat racism were through the courts and the second way is with a method known as civil disobedience. And we're going to look at civil disobedience with the rest of our PowerPoints. This is what Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, all of those famous people, that's what they use. But we're going to look at primarily today the NAACP using the court system to gain equality. Now, their focus was to win cases in the Supreme Court. Because if it was law by the land, then people would be forced to integrate. So we are going to force integration through the court system. And the man who did this was a man by the name of Thurgood Marshall. And we looked at Thurgood Marshall on the video today that focused on the Little Rock Nine. Thurgood Marshall was the most famous NAACP lawyer. He ends up later in life becoming a Supreme Court justice. And Thurgood Marshall is responsible for winning over 30 integration cases brought on by the Supreme Court. The court case that we are going to look at is the court case Brown v. Board. Now, the Brown family is a family from Topeka, Kansas. And the actual court case is the Brown family versus the Board of Ed of Topeka. Now, the reason this trial was started was because the girl in this case was a 9-year-old girl who had an elementary school full of all-white kids that was 4 blocks away. The Board of Education of Topeka forced her to go to a school over 20 blocks away that was reserved for African American students. They fought this. It ultimately landed in the Supreme Court. And what we're going to see is this is a clear case of integration versus segregation. And we are going to challenge with segregation the idea of separate but equal. So that's what S but E stands for, separate but equal. What we are going to find is that the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Brown family and because they voted in favor of the Brown family, they voted for all African Americans. And the reason for this is kind of what backfires on white people. I'm going to erase the Y here. So if you need to get these notes, make sure you pause the video right now, take all the rest of the notes down because I'm getting rid of this. Here is the Y. What the Supreme Court says is basically the reason that you are forcing these African American students to go to these separate schools is because you believe that they are inferior. So whites believe that blacks are inferior. And I think any racist person in the South during that time period would agree. What the Supreme Court says is that by saying this, that it is impossible then to have separate but equal. So because you believe that whites are the superior race, you are providing them with better educational opportunities, you are giving them better books, better classrooms, better teachers, that is not equal. So separate but equal does not exist. The reaction in the South, you can imagine exactly what the reaction is. The South is outraged with this. But this is a landmark victory for African Americans. African Americans are overjoyed by this. They cannot believe it. They love it. What we're going to see is that in 1955, over 500 school districts will desegregate their classrooms and allow African Americans into their schools. However, a lot of those districts will be in the North, Northeast, Midwest areas. The South will take a lot longer. What we're looking at with the Little Rock 9 in Little Rock, Arkansas, that will not happen until 1957, and that is one of the first districts in the South to begin integration. So, quick review. Can we explain how the NAACP used the courts to gain equality for African Americans? If we can understand basically what happened in Brown v. Board, then we are good to go. That's the big thing I want us to know today, is the idea of Brown v. Board and how instead of using other methods, maybe like violence and everything like that, the NAACP used the courts for that instead. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. Hope you enjoy your night, and I will see you all on Wednesday.